Best advice I ever got in security. Go.
Gosh, it had to be skipping out on empathy. We had a big project. We needed IT's support to get a vulnerability management client rolled out. They had to do their own server hardening. We thought this was great. Do both of them at once. They did not agree. Wish I would have put myself in their shoes.
You're listening to CISO Series Podcast, recorded in front of a live audience in San Diego.
Welcome to the CISO Series Podcast. My name is David Spark, and we are recording live in, as you heard, San Diego, specifically La Jolla, which for those of us out here, we know that that is part of San Diego. I'm the producer of the CISO Series. Joining me as my guest co-host is the man sitting to my left, Gary Hayslip, the CISO of SoftBank Investment Advisors. Let's hear it for Gary. We are available at CISOseries.com, and our sponsor for today's episode is Entro, non-human identity and secrets security platform. Thank you, Entro, for sponsoring. We are actually at the Planet CyberSec conference. Not the first time we've done this. We've been invited back before. I'm going to actually ask you a question that not related to this, but Gary, you have been pitched by a few vendors in your past, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Are you the person that actually reviews products?
Yep. Yes,
you
I
do.
am.
You do actually review the products yourself?
Yeah.
You don't have like staff members doing that?
Well, I mean, we do it together.
Oh, you do it together? Okay. So do you see something and then you hand it off to a staff member, or a staff member brings it to you, or probably both ways?
Yeah, honestly, both ways. Normally, I see something, I want their input. Because traditionally they'll be doing more work with it than I probably will be. And they'll know from a practitioner point of view, from an operations point of view, some extra things that we might want to be concerned about. But, we usually do it together as a team.
Is there, the reason I'm asking this, because I ran into somebody at a vendor, not security vendor, but a vendor that we use, and they never pitched me. They actually pitched someone who works with me, and he made a really good argument for the product. And by the way, it was very affordable, so it was not difficult to say yes to it. But it just made me realize, like, if they had come to me, it would have been a useless effort completely. So I'm interested, what are some of the sort of the arguments that your staff makes that says, we really need this in our environment?
Typically, when my staff and I are looking at something, I just don't buy things. Usually there's a problem that we've got that we're trying to fix. If we're going to be replacing something, it's a like for like.
Okay.
So basically going to put in a technology that's going to improve the current security we have and maybe offer new services as well. And then another thing we look at too is how easy is it for my staff to be able to do things with it? The reporting, the visibility, the automation piece as well. If it's going to be integrating with other things in the stack, is that data transfer or that, that data inference between the, the various pieces in the stack, does that do very well?
Okay, so actually you have a very sort of elaborate vetting process. All right. I just want to get a little feedback. All right, let's bring in our guest. He's been very quiet until now, but you heard him at the very beginning of the show. To our far left, joining us for today's episode is the VP of Security and IT over at DNA Nexus, Keith McCartney. Let's hear it for him.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I tell you, CISOs get no respect.
How do CISOs close their credibility gap with the business? It's not their technical acumen, but the Cassandra that's always warning of cyber doom. Now, this is a well-documented issue, and a recent Trend Micro study found that 79% of CISO respondents felt boardroom pressure to downplay cyber risks. Now, the reasons for this pressure were pretty evenly split between being perceived as nagging, overly negative, and just being dismissed out of hand by the board. That's definitely a wrap a CISO wants to avoid. So I'll start with you, Gary, on here. What's a better approach, or maybe that is a good approach, I don't know, your take, maybe a compliment sandwich to get a cyber risk concerns across? What do you think? And do you fear this, or maybe in your past you feared this?
Well, I mean, in my past, yeah, but I mean, I look at myself as a business executive, and I use technology and people and process and frameworks to manage risk. So when I go and I talk to a board, and I also serve on boards and I advise boards, the whole doom and gloom thing, that's one small piece. When I'm there, this is the funding that we have, the projects that we have ongoing. This is how we are supporting the business. This is the current efforts that we are integrated with when other departments. I am a business executive that's talking about how we're supporting the business. And the doom or the risk piece is a small piece of it. If you go before the board and you got 5 minutes to talk to them and all you talk about is the sky is falling, you're doing it wrong because you're not going to be invited back. Board members know things aren't perfect.
Is that the key? What do I say to get invited back?
Well, it's not so much what you say to be invited back as what you say that's pertinent to the business that makes sense.
So they get kind of excited about what you're saying. Oh, this is really relevant to what we're doing right now.
Yeah, and so what I go ahead and I do is I find is, okay, I'm supporting compliance and I'm supporting legal and I'm working with certain projects. And yes, I'm reducing risk. And yes, we are concerned about attacks on our portfolio companies and we're concerned about. So what I do is I talk about how we're doing that support and how we're helping the business move forward and be innovative. And then at the same time, I also talk about the risks that we are reducing. So I'm getting it across that we are dealing with these risks and we are dealing with attacks, but you want to go ahead and kind of sandwich that in with what you're doing for the business and how you are supporting the business, because that's what they want to hear.
All right, Keith, I throw this to you. Agree, disagree, add, and do you have this fear that you're coming off as a Chicken Little Cassandra, sky is falling issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the important things to keep in mind is that these folks are not just there to talk about cyber risk. They're there to talk about every risk that the business faces. And so if you know the context, if you've done your homework and you know the risks that the board is going to be considering or that the company faces, then you can offer your assessment of the cyber risk in context of those other problems and challenges that your business is facing.
And by the way, Gary elaborated very much. Are there certain techniques that you have learned over time? Maybe I made this mistake before, but now I handle it like this, because I can't imagine you were out of the gate doing this right. So maybe give an example of, I used to do it this way, now I do it this way.
Yeah, I think you've got to really listen to your board members. You got to listen to the questions that they're asking and adjust your approach to fit the information that they need. It is important to talk about your program, but they're not going to be concerned about the nitty-gritty details of operations, right? They're looking at the big picture. What is it that you're doing to help the business go out and sell more? What is it that you're doing to help the business be more effective operationally? Changing the time frame it takes to get a new acquisition integrated, changing the time frame it takes to get new employees up and running. All of these things are helpful when you think about the revenue targets that the business is facing.
One of the things that I've learned over my 6 roles as a CISO is that each time you kind of get better because you get smacked and you learn when you talk with boards, is that it helps having a mentor, someone that's either a board member or someone that regularly reports to the board, and they look at your slides ahead of time. They look at your presentation ahead of time, and they'll tell you, they'll start throwing stuff out. And you got 5 minutes. Why you got 35 slides here? Are you stupid? And you start going through stuff, and everything. And okay, we got to get it down to 2 slides. This is what they're going to be interested in. And you want that type of mentor because you want to know the personalities that you're going to be talking to. You want to establish a relationship. You want them to be able to trust you that you can speak about risk and talk about, my program is $35 million on the budget line and this is what we're spending it for, and I need that $35 million. And oh, by the way, I need another 10% increase. But you need to be able to speak to that. And so you want a mentor. You want someone that's going to be able to help you before you go in so you can effectively tell your story. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned is it's about storytelling, helping them relate to what you're discussing and why it's important to them and important to the business.
As a CISO, what do you think about this?
What do we mean when we talk about security engineering? A post on the cybersecurity subreddit argued the definition can vary between industries. Now, one respondent defined it as either an architect role where you do the technical designs and review of designs, or, quote, a programmer that implements the designs. Others defined it as a system admin of security tools, a function of evaluating, implementing, configuring, and maintaining a security platform, or an information system security manager / officer for hire. So I'll start with you, Keith. Is the role of security engineering really that varied? And what do we need to do to clarify it so we understand the role and its value, especially for hiring?
Yeah, I think it is that varied. Engineering, in my mind, is solving problems, right? And the problems that we face as security practitioners are pretty varied. I think about it, there is this discussion about, is it a technical role or is it not a technical role? And I think if you're in the technology function of an organization, or there's a technology component to your business, which is pretty much every business these days, you're going to be solving a technology problem. And if you do that through configuration of a system, pushing a policy, or through writing code, that is solving the problem, right? It doesn't mean that necessarily every person with a security engineer title is going to be writing code, but it should be something that they're not scared of. It should be something that they're familiar with.
Gary, what do you think about the role? And have you struggled with this? And I'm sure you've seen job listings for security engineers are all over the map.
Oh, yeah. Same thing. I do believe it varies for each company, because when you really look at it from a security standpoint, from a management of risk and everything that you're doing as a CISO and your security team, each company has unique issues, whether you're regulated, whether you're not, whether you're the different technologies you use in the different projects and stuff that you're doing, you're operating in different countries. And so your security program is going to reflect what the business currently needs. And so engineering, I think there's some core things that all security engineers have. And know, like, firewalls, IDP. These are things that, and that's about 60% of the job. The other 40% is things that are going to be unique for each time, for each business that you're at. And then the more senior you get, as you build your teams and you're a team member and then a team leader and then a manager, and then say you start working yourself up to CISO, then you start bringing in the soft skills as well. I mean, it changes, and it's going to reflect the business.
So what I'm hearing, I'm kind of hearing two things. The role evolves over time. And two, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the role would also change depending on the environment you're in. And you're the same person, Gary, but has the role changed in different environments you've been in?
Oh, yeah. It's basically the needs of the business. And you'll see the business shift where, at SoftBank, we were an on-prem. And then 2019, we made the decision to totally gut all of the infrastructure and go 100% SaaS. That's a bunch of different skill sets that you're going to start recruiting for now, because you're in a full cloud environment.
One of the things I think about too is your security engineers are advisors to other folks in your business. So they've got to be able to peer with those folks, and they got to understand what their roles are too, right? So if they're peering with somebody and helping with a marketing website development, they've got to know a thing or two about how websites are run. Same thing if they're peering with software engineers, they got to understand how software is built. That's their job.
Who's our sponsor this week?
It is Entro, and let me tell you about them. So as non-human identities, such as applications, APIs, and devices continue to expand, we know that's happening, their associated risks and related exposures expand with them. That's kind of true with all tech. So this is why Entro Security created a unique and powerful feature, non-human identity detection and response, or NHIDR for short. So Entro's NHIDR capabilities identify potential threats by monitoring behaviors to illuminate unusual usage patterns and unauthorized interactions. Now, that means that if an NHI, non-human identity, acts outside of its normal parameters, like accessing data unexpectedly or interacting with systems it shouldn't, NHIDR catches it in real time. So non-human identity detection and response doesn't just stop at detection. It actively mitigates these risks before they can cause damage in a world where a single compromised NHI can bring down an entire organization. Having non-human identity detection and response in place gives your organization the edge it needs to stay secure. So stay ahead of the curve with Entro Security and their advanced detection and response solutions. For more, just go to their website. It's Entro, ENTRO.security.
It's time to play What's Worse?
All right. We all know, for those of you who have heard the show before, you know this game. This game has been around since the beginning we started this show. We get wonderful what's worse scenarios from our audience. And by the way, we're always looking for more, so please send them in. And essentially, it's a risk management game, something security professionals deal with. And we have a great couple of scenarios from John Hayden with Trend Micro. And here it is. Gary, you're going to answer first, and here we go. Scenario number 1. Your company gets fined for $10 million by the SEC for not being transparent for a breach, or your company's CISO goes to jail for 24 months for not being transparent in a breach. What's worse?
Oh, I don't want to go to jail.
I know. Okay, so I know that you don't want to go to jail. Let's just think about the overall business. What would be worse? Yeah, if you're talking about yourself personally, I could see that second scenario for sure would be worse.
Okay.
All right.
So I'm not going to jail.
You, Gary, are not going to jail.
Okay, cool.
Okay, but you're thinking about the business.
Okay, the business would be the $10 million fine.
That's far worse?
Yeah, because it's basically the damage to the brand and the company and everything else would be the fine.
So it's worse if it's you, for sure. That is for sure. I mean, that's obvious. It's always worse. But if Gary Hayslip is out of the equation here, because I don't say Gary here, then it's far worse than $10 million.
Well, you're not really telling me why the CISO is going.
Well, because that's what the company, he's not being transparent in a breach. We're just leaving it at that.
All right, so I would say the company getting the $10 million fine would be worse if I was thinking about the company.
Yes. Well, we're trying to be thinking about the company.
No,
but if you're being selfish.
If I'm being selfish, I'm not going to jail.
Exactly. All right. All right. Keith, I throw this to you.
Yeah, I got kids, man. No, I agree with Gary on this
100%.
Yeah.
So again, if it's you specifically, it's worth. But so you don't think, because 10 million is bad, but I don't know. Does the brand damage of your CISO going to jail for 24 months, could that be worse than $10 million?
Depends.
All right, let's hear. What's the depends?
The thing about it is that CISO is going to jail because they were not transparent about a breach. Mm-hmm. Okay. All of us, CISOs that have been in, I've dealt with multiple incidents. Usually the issue is it isn't that we're not being transparent. It's the fact that we're being transparent as can be and the company's not listening to us. That's typically the problem. Mm-hmm. If they're not being transparent, that means they're hiding things from the company. So, I mean, it's kind of like, they're at fault. They put themselves in this issue where they're going to prison for 2 years because they've been caught about the fact that they hid some facts and they put their company in trouble to cover their own butt.
Okay, which could speak to the culture at the company, possibly.
And
that could be very brand damaging, conceivably.
Because, cultures tend to run over CISOs quite a lot.
Okay. All right, I'm throwing this one to you, Keith. Back again. Do you think it could be that 24 months could be more damaging than $10 million?
I think it's the same conversation that Gary just highlighted is what is the cultural problem that caused this issue, either the fine or the jail time? What didn't work properly in breach identification and notification?
Very good point. All right, I throw this to the audience. By applause, how many people think it's far worse that the company gets fined $10 million? And again, I'm taking out of the equation that anyone in here would be going to jail because I know that's the selfish response. So $10 million, is that the worst scenario? By applause. That was a good amount. And by applause, how many people think it is the CISO going to jail is far worse? That is pretty evenly split, I must say. I'm kind of shocked by that.
It's time to play Fantasy CISO.
All right. We have yet to play this game on this podcast, and there's a heavy visual aspect to it, so apologies to the listeners right here, but we're trying to spell this out as much as possible. So I need you guys to turn around, bring kind of the mics with you as you turn around. So Keith is our guest. I'm going to have Keith go first here. Essentially, these are your controls. You get to pick your team from these controls, Keith. And essentially, you'll each go one by one, and Dutch here is going to be helping us with selecting them. So your first control, which one do you want from this list here?
I think I'll go with incident response management.
Okay, incident response manager goes Keith. Gary, which one do you want?
So, I mean, if he gets one...
It's crossed out. Yeah, you see? You can't select it. Like picking players for a team. You both can't have the same player, Gary.
Dude, this sucks. I don't like it.
You're going to see how this game plays out.
I really don't like this. Where is where is identity on here?
Identity? I guess we don't have, we can put it on. There we go.
So we have no 2FA on here.
You got access control there.
There was access control.
Okay. I'll do access control.
There you go. Access control management. There you go. We have it. All right. That goes to Gary. All right. Go ahead, pick Keith.
All right. I'm between asset management and data recovery. Is there any poll the audience here?
You can. You want to poll the audience? Go ahead. You want to go ahead. Poll the audience. By applause, how many people think he should pick asset discovery? No one. I just go for EDR, I guess.
All right. Let's go with data recovery.
Oh, data recovery. You want a data recovery.
Data recovery. Let's go with that one.
All right. They didn't even respond. I wasn't even going to poll them on the other one. All right. Gary, pick the next one.
I'll do EDR.
EDR? Okay. And then to Keith?
I'll do, this is tough. Let's go with application software security.
Okay, application software security. He's got application software security. Gary, we got 5 left.
Controlled use of admin.
All right, there you go. That's somewhere on the identity level, sort of. All right, Keith?
Asset management. Go back to that one.
All right, Gary, 3 left.
I'll do email and web browser protections.
All right, 2 left. Keith?
I will go for security awareness.
Security awareness. Keith and Gary, you get penetration testing.
Pen testing and red teams.
All right. Now, let's go to the summary page. That's the second tab where it says attack. All right. So just quickly before we reveal the attack, Keith has asset management, data recovery capabilities, implements security awareness and skills training program, application software security, and incident response management. Gary has EDR, access control management, controlled use of admin privileges, pen testing, and email and web browser protections. All right. What's going to happen is there's going to be a random attack, and then Keith and Gary are going to each argue why they are better situated to handle this attack than the other, and you, the audience, will vote. All right. Reveal the attack. What do we have? Your cloud-hosted logging platform has been compromised. All right. Gary, I will have you go first. Why are you better situated to handle this attack?
Well, let's see. All right, so we're managing access control. We're managing admin privileges. We got endpoint detection, on there. I mean, I'm used to running my EDR solutions inside my cloud environments.
All right. Keith, why do you think you're better situated?
I've got incident response management.
All right, there you go. He leaves it. He just leaves it there. He just leaves it. No more needs to be said, Keith.
I was really excited about that. That was my top draft pick.
All right. We're going to throw this to the audience now. Audience, by applause, how many people think Gary is going to win here with his team of controls? By applause. All right. There's about 4 people who are applauding for you, Gary. And Keith, how many people think Keith is going to win? All right. Keith wins. Good job, guys.
Red alert! All CISOs on deck.
Quote, imagine a house where the drywall, flooring, fireplace, and light fixtures are all made by companies that need continuous access and whose failures would cause the house to collapse. You'd never set foot in such a structure, yet that's how software systems are built. Now, that's how Bruce Schneier talked about the market-driven brittleness shown in the CrowdStrike outage. He argued the push for short-term profitability leads to situations where everyone runs as leanly and quickly as possible with little redundancy. Now, we need, quote, infrastructure to mimic nature in the way things fail. Now, he pointed to Netflix's Chaos Monkey tool, we all do this actually, as an example of something whose purpose is to build resiliency. Can this kind of deliberate breaking of infrastructure, can this be done at scale? Can we kind of build resiliency at scale? Kind of, looking at the Chaos Monkey example, which is used within a very closed environment. And then what could be an area where we're going to have a point of failure? I mean, you don't have to call anyone out by name, but we're happy to listen if you want to.
No, I don't think you can do it by scale.
Okay. Simple as that. We're wrapping up this segment.
Well, the thing with this is that you're not breaking what's causing it. And the fact that, there's a whole thing about infinite games and finite games.
Right.
Cybersecurity as a community, as an industry, is a finite game. We're stone crazy if we think we're going to be a winner because this thing never ends. The threats, the things that we're dealing with never ends. That drives profitability. That drives getting the product out there as soon as we can. That drives this whole market thing. That's what Bruce is talking about here. Where if you're dealing with an infinite game, you're in the game to play the game. You're not in the game to win, which means that you're in the game to be there for long term resilience.
Right. And by the way, there's a great book, The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, that speaks to that the winning of the game is the continuing to be able to play the game.
To continue playing. So if we take out the point to where the issues that what Bruce is talking about, where we're just hurrying to go ahead and get the market to go ahead and make this quarter's numbers to make money, and instead we're looking at the fact that we want to produce something that's going to be around for a long time, and that's good for the community, that's good for our customers, and that it's going to be resilient and it's going to be able to take attacks. That is honestly what we should be talking about. I get what he's talking about the chaos monkey piece, and that you're constantly breaking and you want to build resilience that way. I'm like, we shouldn't be breaking. It shouldn't be that way. Just looking at it from a different point of view.
All right. Okay. The thing is, but the value of breaking is that hopefully we won't have another incident like the CrowdStrike incident.
Well, you'll know where it's going to break ahead of time.
So you could build resiliency at that point. I think that's kind of a basic point in cybersecurity. I'm going to throw this to you, Keith. What say you? Can it be done at scale? Where could be a possible breaking point? How do we learn about the next breaking point so we can build resiliency?
I think testing everything, like literally everything at scale is going to be a very challenging problem. I do think that there's parallels, though, with what we do already. When we build software, when we design systems and architect them, we do a threat model. We look at how can this thing go wrong? How can we have problems? And I think resiliency or availability, if you want to use that word, is something that we look at. And I think that that's something that we can continue to do and do more often. But I don't know that we can do it across everything at one time. I think it's going to remain in the component level. So when you're looking at pieces of a system or you're looking at a third party and your dependency on that third party, you're going to do the assessment there. It's funny the point on Chaos Monkey, because Netflix actually has a Chaos Kong. So rather than a component failure, it simulates a regional failure. And they also have something that they've called the Chaos Platform, where you can do further automation. But I think with those things, you start to run into this problem where not every component that we have needs to be multi-region, multi-cloud, fully available, fully redundant. It's just a cost problem at that point. So we still have to make decisions on where we want to spend our limited investment to add the resiliency in.
What about this AI security challenge?
CISOs love a good framework. They are a critical tool to help push compliance conversations forward as organizations attempt to manage risk. But when it comes to AI, what are our framework options? Actually, we heard a little from Dutch Schwartz about this very thing today. So Sita Lakshmi Sangameswaran posted a good roundup of the existing AI frameworks, showing which ones are designed for CISOs, like the NIST AI RMF, and which are more developer-focused, like MITRE Atlas. So I'll start with you, Keith, on this. What makes an AI framework so unique? Have you found an AI framework that works for your organization, or does it feel like we're going to have to start from scratch?
Yeah, this is a really great question, and we have had some very good conversations on this today. I think the frameworks are tending to approach the problem at two different ends. So they're looking, one, at the governance side of like, how do organizations identify and control this risk? And then some of the other frameworks, MITRE is a great example, OWASP is a great example, approach from a very technical level of what do your practitioners need to do? What do they need to consider when they're building systems that include these AI components? So I'm really hoping we don't need another framework. I think that's a problem that we find ourselves in. We've got plenty of them already. I think it's just a matter of looking at the framework for the problem that you're trying to solve. Are you trying to solve this organization-wide, or are you trying to solve this for the threats that a specific system will face?
Gary, your thoughts?
Yeah, I do recommend his article that he posted up on Medium for anybody that wants to read it. It's actually really good. I was amazed at the list of stuff that's out there dealing with this right now, and it's very fast moving and changing. I'm used to using frameworks. We're heavily into Gen AI where I work at as well. Thank God I don't have a developer team that's doing this, so I don't have to deal with that side of the house. What I find interesting, though, is that many of the security startups that are starting to pop up now, that are doing things around AI security, are now offering the operation side and the dev side, depending on which side you want to use. And that's the question I've been asking them now as they're developing this is, which framework are you using as you develop this tool or you develop this platform and you're bringing it to market? And many of them will talk about NIST or they'll talk about MITRE, but as you were just stating, Keith, they tend to be for specific things. They're not really for everything. And I don't think there's really anything for everything yet. It just depends on the use case of what you're doing. If you are an organization, a company that's selling a product, and the product happens to have some type of AI capabilities, or you're using LLMs, then you'll use a specific framework that they're developing now that tends to be more towards dev. If you're a CISO, you may want to be familiar with that, because if you are tasked with AppSec and product security, you want to be able to look at it, but really you're going to be real more concerned about operations and the governance piece. Where's all the little Gen AI tools that are popping up? Where's the data leakage that's happening? Are we doing this correctly? Are we training our staff correctly for prompt engineering and making sure they're using the correct tools? And that's a totally different framework that's being developed. Again, it's going to be up to the business.
Let me ask a question. Is there anything that's unique with AI that frameworks are not covering? Or is it just, hey, this is just another new technology. It's not the first time we've had to deal with a new technology.
I was asked at another conference a couple of weeks ago, and to me, cyber is cyber. We still have issues that we still got to manage. People are still going to be stupid with technology. AI is something new. It accelerates extremely fast. I mean, the rate of change has just been amazing. But when you really look at it, it's the use of data with new technologies, and you got to be able to understand the controls that you typically have around data, and then look at it at scale and look at it how fast it's moving with these new technologies. And so in many ways, the controls and the stuff that you're trying to do are still the same, but it's a new technology. It's a new approach. It's something, so you've got to learn that to understand the risk that you're still trying to manage. And so, I try to tell people, cyber is still cyber. The risks are still there that we still got to manage, but this is a new technology that you're dealing with, and you can't be scared of it. You got to get involved and actually use it, work with it, break it, and then help your team be comfortable with it as well, so then you can then understand the risk.
Keith, anything to add?
Yeah, I think there's one thing about AI that might be a little bit unique, and that's the over-reliance issue. And that is not necessarily an obvious issue for the people that are developing and using and designing these systems. So that's one that we got to think about.
Yep.
It's time for the audience question speed round.
I have in my hand here a handful of questions from our audience, these people out here. And we got a good amount of time. I think we can get through all of them, just a few right here. So I want to get your feedback on these. From Emily O'Carroll at GuidePoint Security. Want your thoughts. I'll start with you, Gary. For those entering the field now, so those green or switching careers, what are the top three, and I want you to say top three growing roles you believe in cyber that would be a good entry point?
Actually, we did this whole thing about people that are entering, and if they're green and they're starting, I don't tell them to come into cyber. I tell them to go into networks. I said, learn cloud, learn Python, get familiar with AI tools, learn networks, basically come in on the IT side and then pivot.
All right. That's your
100% agree with that. I think find an organization and an industry that you're passionate about. Find a role where you can do support for technology, support for networks development, and then help your security team.
All right. Good advice. All right. Hope someone green is listening and adhering to that. All right. From Haral Tsitsivas from Arlo. Now, we're going to compare this to a year ago. What do you think the stress level of a CISO is today as compared to a year ago? Higher, lower? What's unique? Keith, you first.
I think the individual stressors have changed, particularly with LLMs and AI. But I think overall, the stress level is probably about the same. Probably about the same.
Hold it. Now, is one thing going up and another thing going down, so that's why it's equal?
Yeah.
Okay, what? What do you think's going up? What's coming down?
Like the focus on AI is
bringing it up.
And I think the geopolitical situation, for a lot of reasons, is continuing to be a hot topic, depending on your industry.
Is there anything bringing it down? Gary's trying to think. No.
Not that I know.
I'm interested. I'm going to go to the audience here. Does anyone think there's anything that's bringing stress level down? Anything? Complete silence.
So maybe the answer is then that it's going up.
It's going up. I guess
By default.
We got CISOs going before the SEC. We've got companies being fined huge amounts of money for different things that they have security components. We're going to before boards and leadership teams more often. There's nothing that I can see that's reducing.
Oh, so this is why CISOs are getting burnt out, because it's just adding non-stop stress. Am I right?
I've known several that have walked away in the last 6 months.
Yeah, well, whole other episode. We'll come back to that. All right, from Matt Stamper of the Executive Advisors Group, and I love this question, and I hope you have an answer, by the way, for it. What's a metric you used to report that you stopped reporting?
Oh, figures Matt would run up at this one. We used to go ahead and report on like how many things were patched and how many things were unpatched. And we quit reporting on that just because it doesn't really reflect the proper risk of the organization. Because you're going to go ahead and patch specific things that are unique to the business, unique to the applications and stuff that you're using. And there may be other things that you don't patch right away that you may patch later. And so having this whole thing of, well, if you've got this many that are unpatched or this many that aren't patched and you got this many days in between, it doesn't really properly reflect the risk. Mm-hmm. And we just quit doing it. And actually the boards would just glaze over. They didn't really care.
All right.
Yeah, same thing. We focused on vulnerability remediation SLA, like how well you're doing versus the raw number of issues.
You stopped doing that. Anything else you stopped doing, or just that, the patching numbers?
We had other metrics that we were looking at around identity and access management, but it just wasn't driving the right decisions. It wasn't driving the right insights. So we've really focused on, again, as Gary mentioned, where our risks are versus where our operations are taking action.
All right. Last question comes from Richard Greenberg, who is with Layer 8 Masters and the man who's responsible for all of us here. Let's hear it for Richard. Oh, you're going to clap louder than that. There you go. All right. I like this question, and we are making sure that none of your CFOs are going to hear this episode. So we want to know your secrets. What's your favorite technique to get your budget? Come on, reveal, Keith.
Have a good business case. Have a good business case. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to do it now? And are there other options that are cheaper?
You're just saying yes to that, Gary?
No, I mean, it's, the thing about this is that when I'm doing my budget, I'm never doing it by myself. Typically when I am briefing my budget, I report to the CTO. And so it's myself and the CTO briefing all of our projects in technology across the organization. And then when I brief the specific things that I am doing, I tie it into other departments and how we're supporting the deals teams and how we're supporting legal and compliance. I never do it where it's security standalone. Instead, it's security. I've got these specific things. This is what I'm supporting. You're telling a story. And so it's that. So that way they understand the impact. If you take that away, you're going to hurt these other departments as well and their projects.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to the very end of this episode. Let's hear it for our guests, Gary Hayslip at SoftBank Investment Advisors, and also Keith McCartney with DNA Nexus. A huge thanks to our sponsor. That's Entro Security, non-human identity and secret security platform. Remember, go to their website, Entro, ENTRO.security for non-human identity detection and response, or NHIDR. All right. In closing, I always like to ask, are you hiring? So maybe your portfolio companies, also within SoftBank Advisors, also with DNA Nexus. Are you hiring? Yes, Gary?
Yes, I am.
All right. Keith, a quick answer. Yes, I am. Keith, are you hiring?
Absolutely. Reach out.
Reach out. All right. You can reach out. We'll have links to their LinkedIn profiles. Our audience may contact you directly if interested in a role, yes? But go to the site first. Just don't go say, hey, what do you got for me? Go to the site, do your own research, and then come to them with a specific request. I want to thank Richard Greenberg, Planet Cybersec, Layer 8 Masters, and this entire audience for putting on a great show and inviting us to record this episode. And also thank you to our audience for supporting and listening to the CISO Series podcast.
That wraps up another episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do. We have lots more shows on our website, CISOseries.com. Please join us on Fridays for our live shows, Super Cyber Friday, our virtual meetup, and Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review. This show thrives on your input. Go to the Participate menu on our site for plenty of ways to get involved, including recording a question or a comment for the show. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, contact David Spark directly at david@cisoseries.com. Thank you for listening to the CISO Series podcast.